Hello again, this is Saul. I'm going to show you today some changes that I've made for version 1.2 of VisiData. So I've expanded the file and directory browser. This here is a directory of recordings of pieces by Chopin, who's one of my favorite composers. First off, you can see that I've added a directory column, which, because by default it used to only show the current directory, and then now it recursively dives into the whole thing and shows all files under the directory that's in this directory, including all the files and all subdirectories. And secondly, and more importantly, now any field here is editable. And in fact, if I wanted to, for instance, rename a file, I would just go ahead and edit this and then rename it to whatever I want it to be, and then press enter, and then the file name has been edited in memory. You can see this because it's been colored yellow here. It hasn't been saved yet though. There's a separate commit step. When you want to save something, then you press Ctrl+S and that will save it. Or if you want to not save it and you want to blow away the changes that you've made in memory, you can press Ctrl+R. And so Ctrl+R, for instance here, will reload the entire directory, and then the changes have been gone away. So let's say that we wanted to change the size. We can do that similarly. We can change this size to some other number. Maybe put a bunch of stuff in there. And that's going to either truncate the file or expand the file, depending on if the size is bigger or smaller. And we can also edit the modification time for some things. And in fact, we can do not just editing one thing, but we can also edit things in bulk. So if we wanted to, for instance, change the modification time for all the ballads, we could select all the ballads and then go to modification time and use the bulk edit GE command to change it to some date in the future. Let's say 2019, 8/26. And now if we go ahead and save this directory sheet, those changes will all be affected. So we press Ctrl+S and they've all been changed. Now this one up here is a little bit funny because you'll note that the modification time is still highlighted. That's because we had the modification time in memory as this older value, but then once we changed the size, it automatically updated the modification time to today's date, but in memory we're still thinking of it as the older value. And so if we reload, we'll see today's date. If we do another save on this row, then we'll save the old modification time. So I'm just going to reload, and you can see that goes to today's date. So be very careful with this functionality. If you don't ever press Ctrl+S, you have nothing to worry about. Only the changes are only in memory. But once you do press Ctrl+S, you can do some serious damage to the files if you've made the wrong changes to things. So please do be careful about that. But seriously, every single field on here is editable, including the directory here. If you wanted to move, for instance, I want to move all of the files from Piano Classics Volume 1. There's 5 of them here. And I want to move them up to the main level. I would just do GE to edit them all and then set them all to nothing. And then they will be moved up there if I press Ctrl+S. And I'll press Ctrl+S, and lo and behold, then they've been moved. So then one other thing here, if we look at the columns sheet for this sheet, there are 3 columns at the end here that are hidden by default, but if we select them and then change them to be none hidden, then you can see on this sheet that there they are. We can also see the owner and the group, and basically these are all the fields that also show up in ls-l, but you can also edit them here too if you have the appropriate permissions to edit them. So you have to be running this as root, but if you are running it as root, then you can select a bunch of files and mass edit the owners of those files to another symbolic name of that user. So this is some pretty powerful stuff we've got here. If we wanted to do another brief little excursion, we could use another new command that I've gotten here, g*. It's very similar to the star command, except for instead of creating a new column, it actually applies the edits in place. And so let's say we wanted to rename all these files to remove all the spaces. That's a common thing that people want to do with their media collections. So we would do g* and then give it space and slash, which means that we'll take all the spaces and convert them to nothing at all. And there we go. Now all of the file names, if we press Ctrl+S, all the files would be saved or renamed to not have any spaces in them. So that's the main workflows on the directory sheet, and I hope that these are useful to somebody. If you do find them useful, please let me know if you have any other questions or suggestions to make the workflows even better. I would also appreciate those. Otherwise, thank you very much for using VisiData, and I'll see you next time.